Okay, hello guys. We will be discussing about what we did in our backend in this video. This is our backend. We created our backend using Spring Boot, Spring Data JPA, Spring Security, and Spring Data JPA is basically we added some properties. We added a driver from our MySQL host. Okay, so it's based on MySQL basically. After this, we need anything else we need? I don't think. Yeah. So you guys should have basic understanding of what is a Maven based project. So Maven is basically it's like a project structure. So this is your project structures. We'll be having source, we'll be having multiple packages, we'll be having test packages and all everything. So first you have to open your pom.xml file. You can see this project, it is based on Maven, so this project structure is based on Maven, and you can check project name, artifact ID, version, name, description, dot dot dot. We have used Java 17 to create this project, and these are the dependencies which we can add: data JPA, starter security, web, DevTools, MySQL connector, Lombok. Lombok will automatically create constructor, getter, setter, other helper methods. Okay, and for JWT token we have added JJWT. That's a dependency. We added starter security, Java X. I don't know why activation. Okay, these things we have added. After that, we have to create some packages. Now, what are packages? Packages are like folder in which you can add your Java files. Okay, it will basically it will structure your project in a way that you can read it so that others can also read it and check what you did. So we have created multiple packages, but before that we will check out that what is our main application file. So this is our main application file, which is donation application, in which there is a main function, and this main function will run this Spring application, and it will what it have in parameter, it have donation application dot class. Okay, so before that I would like to tell you what is Spring. Spring basically it is based on concept of dependency injection, which you guys have to study what is dependency injection. So it's like if you have a car and that car have an engine, and one day that engine somehow burned. Okay, so you might have to repair it. If you repair it, you won't be having any engine in your car for that amount of time. So instead of repairing, you can replace it. Now that's the amount of flexibility you want in your project, that you can that your code is modularized and it is not dependent to anything. You can later on change those dependencies. Okay, so it is dependency free, it is not strictly dependent on any other objects. Okay, it's a very uh, in-depth concept that you have to learn. It's not so simple task that you can understand it really. For what I am saying, I don't know if you guys can even understand it, but yeah, this is it. So in a Spring framework we do these things using annotation. Why what is the difference between Spring and Spring Boot is the annotations we have got in Spring Boot. In Spring Boot we've got multiple annotations which are quite useful. Some of those are Spring Boot application, enable JPA repository. You can see enable JPA repository will enable your Spring Data JPA in your project. Now what is Spring Data JPA? It's like the way how you deal with your database. You don't want to write your custom query. If you want it that way, you can do it, but nobody does that, because it's the same code. You just have to write your own select star this from this table and dot dot dot. Okay, so nowadays you don't have to write this. These are all automated using Spring Data JPA and Hibernate. So what is Hibernate? Hibernate is basically the implementation of Spring Data JPA. So Spring Data JPA is like an interface. Also, these terms you have to take a look. What is interface? What is class? Okay, what is implementation? What is override? So you have to go through core Java concepts like these. Here we have set up our username, password. Sorry, our username, password, and URL of our database. Here you can see in this URL, you can see 3306 our database port number. Donation platform is our database name. Create database if not exists. If there is no database which is already exists in your system, then it will create that database. Okay. After this, you can see there is some logging level which is currently set to debug. You can change it. There are multiple type of logging level like info, debug, error. There are multiple types. Okay. After that, we have got our driver class name. So that's our SQL driver class name. So this is the name. You can mention it over here. Okay, JPA is based on Hibernate. So when you run your project, your backend, it will, you can see that in console there are multiple loggings like info, debug, warning. There are multiple loggings. Okay, you can see those things, and you can see that it is started. And once you do some sort of retrieval from a database, you will get to see that there is some sort of query written in the console. So how we did that? We we enabled it true in our properties file. Okay, so yep, this is our server is on 8081. You can see it is running here on 8081 Tomcat. This is some security stuffs. uh okay, these things cool. So this is our application.properties file. I hope I'm recording. Yep. Okay, after this you have to install Java in your system, only then it will run. For that we installed Azul OpenJDK, Zulu OpenJDK. Okay, after that what we did, we created a config where we, so these are basically your packages are like folder, I told you already. So this is your secret key, which will be static. Expiration time, I'll tell you what is expiration time later. Some constant which will not change, like this. What will be the donation type? So here you can see okay, one second, veg, non-veg, any. Then here is your order status, processing, out of delivery, completed, transaction status, pending, succeed, failed, user type, user, volunteer, admin, these things. Okay, so yep, then we have to create what? We have to create entity. What is entity? Entity is like a table. What in your database there will be multiple tables, so entity is also like a table. It will represent your table. For example, user, here in user you can see there is one annotation which is mentioned that it is an entity. One second. This is a table which is having name users, and this is basically your lombok. Whatever written from this, from here line 26 to 29, this is what? These are annotations from lombok. Okay, what this does, it will create automatically getter and setters. It will create no args constructor, all argument constructor, and required argument constructor. These are the columns in your database. This is an annotation which will tell that your password should not be null. These also come from Lombok. It is. After that, you can see there is a many to one. You should learn one more concept, that is what is one to many to one, many to many, these things in SQL. Then you will get to know about this and how to join columns in from different tables. Okay, that also you guys need to learn from MySQL. You can like check out any reference if you want. Okay, after that there are multiple, you can just check out each one by one. These are all tables in your database. After that we will create repository. What is repository? Repository will directly you don't have to write your custom query. You can possibly, if you want, you can write it as well, but if you suppose this is a repository, if you want to find any user by email, you can just write this function and it will do it automatically for you. You don't have to do anything, it will do it automatically for you. And in donation, you can see if you really want to create your custom query, you can write it in this annotation query. This is your custom query. Okay, you can write it as well. Just the only important thing is you have to extend JPA repository. So this is an inheritance concept. If you have learned object oriented concept, you know that we use extend to inherit features from other classes. So this is our JPA repository and we are extending. Okay, after repository we will be creating exception. Suppose you want to sign up but you are already signed up, so it will throw this error already exist exception. Sorry, it will throw this exception which is already exist exception. And these are all sort of exception, like not found. If you want to fetch that data, like you want to fetch if that donation is made or not, and it is found that that donation does not even exist, so not found exception will be thrown. So after that we need to create a handler so that our exception works and throw something that we can read. So these are the exception handler. We need to use this annotation called as rest controller advice. It will, what it do, whenever an exception get thrown, it will automatically call this exception handler and return this response, which is response entity having response in a map, which is our status code and message. That there are some sort of status code corresponding to different types of HTTP request. Okay, so not found, conflict, bad request, these kind of status code are there. You have seen it like 404 error not found. So 404 is a status code. Okay, after this you guys have to create, after this we created services. What is services? It is also a package which contains two more packages. In service we created interfaces, and in implementation we created implementation those of those interfaces here. So here you can see user service. So what is service? As the name suggests, it will contain all those services, all those functionalities. Okay, so in user service it is an interface. So interface is like a contract which will bound your implementation classes to must have these methods in that class. That what I'm trying to say, if there is a class which implement this user service interface, then it should have these functions implemented in it. Okay, for example, this add user we have created, this is our user service, this is our user service implementation file. So we have created our user service implementation. Here we have injected, how to inject, so this is a component, service is a, this is a component, this is also a component. How do we inject this component into this component? By using, here we just have to implement, for example, if we want to inject repository, we will do it by auto add. After this, you can see add user is here, add user is also here, so it got implemented in here as well. Okay, this is actually, this is it. After creating services, you have to create controller. Controller is REST APIs. So for that you have to mention REST controller, and you have to mention that API and what is the base API. After that we'll inject some dependencies which are required. After that there are some method get, put, post. Okay, so we have to implement those as well. So after that we can add this API. This is the path variable which is ID. These are basically API. You have to learn all these things. I'll tell you one thing. For example, if you want to update, if you want to get a user, like suppose you get a user ID, if you want to get that user, so we created a find user by ID. We just have to pass that ID here. Then we will check in our user service find by user ID method, and we'll pass that ID. If there is any user, we will return that in a response entity format. If there is no user found, we'll throw that exception. And you know, when we throw that exception, what happens? We already seen it, that it goes through our handler, and our handler will do what? It will return a response entity having that response and HTTP status that is not found. After these controllers, there are multiple controllers. We have seen user, we can check login logout as well. So this is our login logout controller. You can see base API, and this is the API which is used to post that we are logging in. Okay, after, like, what you have to do, you guys have to select all this thing, copy and paste it to your chat GPT and ask, please explain this code to me. What I can do, I can tell you the flow, like how everything goes. Okay, after this we have to add our security. So this is our security, this is our security config. Here I am not going very in depth, but here we have set our CORS policy. You have to search what is CORS policy. It basically, cause if you don't set up your CORS policy, your backend cannot be communicate with your frontend. So to communicate frontend and backend together, we have to set our CORS policy. So we created a CORS configuration, and we set our allowed origins, that it should be connected to frontend with having this path. Okay, it should allow these methods. It should be having of type application JSON. The content should be of this type. Then right now we have disabled the CSRF token, like we have disabled CSRF, but later on we will enable it. This is basically to reduce the security vulnerability. There are some attacks which is CSRF attacks. You can study it. Here are some request matches. So these APIs are available publicly, so you can access it publicly even if you don't have any authority, or even if you are not authenticated. After this, these are the APIs which are only be controlled by admin. So this has only authority of admin, only admin can access it. Okay, these are password encoder. So suppose if you are signing up, your password will not be saved in your database directly. It will first go through this encryptor, that password will get encrypted, and then that encrypted password will get stored in your database. These things, after this we created JWT. JWT is something which is very difficult to understand, but I'll go through this once. So we created this component. There is difference between bean and component. You have to go through it. What is bean, what is component? Okay, So this is your secret key, which we have imported from our const yep, which we have imported from config package. How we can import it? Here you can see line number 11, you can see it is imported. Okay, like that's the power of packages. You can use any package from anywhere to anywhere. Okay, here this is very difficult to understand, but I'll go through this. What you want to do, you want to create a JWT token, right? When you logging in, want to create it, so you want to generate it. How do we generate it? For that we need claims and username. So this is your claims and this is your username, and after that it goes through create token. So create token will build jwt.build, and it requires claims, it requires subject is your username, it requires when that JWT token is issued, and it also required that what is its expiration time, that after how much time it will get uh, invalid. Okay, then we will sign it with some algorithm and all, and then we'll compact it. After that create token, we can validate that token if that token is still valid or not. We can check if that token is expired or not. Okay, these things, yep, these things are required actually. So these are the security which we have implemented. So this is the total backend as of now. We will later on add on some security as well, more security into it. Okay, thank you.